Hey, World Entertainment, and this will be the review for the brand new Netflix movie from the Russo brothers, starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt, which is The Electric State, which is an adaptation from a book, which I didn't know that. And from everything I've heard, it doesn't actually really follow the book all that much. So overall, I won't put spoilers or anything into this, in case you want to watch the movie, but I'm not going to recommend it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who will watch it and think it's okay and fine. Now, the special effects in it are pretty damn good. For the most part, there's a couple of bits where it's a bit iffy, but overall, the effects are good. So what is the story? Well, it's about humans versus robots, basically, that in the 90s, that's right, this thing is set in 1994. But there's a war between 1990 and 1994 where robots pretty much rose up and fought humans and humans fought back. The irony of the whole thing, though, is that the humans fighting back against robots were only able to do it by making robots. Yeah, it's like, okay, only they are in control of those robots because you put on like a VR headset basically and you upload your consciousness and off you go. So they're basically mech suits for all intents and purposes. But that's basically what the story is until Millie Bobby Brown's character loses her family and stuff like that, and then she finds this robot, or a robot finds her, and it goes from there. And then of course she finds Chris Pratt and stuff. Overall, the movie, it's boring, and to be honest with you, I would start getting very worried for Avengers Doomsday with the Russo brothers, because if this is what they can bring to the table nowadays, yeah, that movie's in trouble. Performance-wise, it's a bit of a mixed bag, really, to be honest with you. Chris Pratt, he's fine for the most part, but there are moments where he seems to be almost playing an exaggerated Star-Lord. There's, like, you can clearly see elements of Star-Lord, but then every now and again it goes to, it's like he's doing an impression of Star-Lord rather than playing Star-Lord. It's like he forgot how to play Star-Lord. And you're kind of going, okay. Millie Bobby Brown is basically Millie Bobby Brown, to be honest with you. She does that acting where she can make her voice sound like I'm talking normally. Now I'm angry. Now I'm sad. Now I'm more emotional, blah, blah, blah. But her facial expressions never particularly change. I think she needs to work on that. She could really kind of go to the next level if she could really get facial expressions, real emoting. The only other couple of actual actors who you see physically are Short Round is in it for a small part. He's a doctor, but he's in it for a little bit. But he also continues as a robot as well, that he basically uploaded his conscious into, and it's strange. You'd have to see it to kind of get that, but he's in there. Stanley Tucci is the only other kind of main human that's around, and he's the villain of the piece who runs this company. I can't even remember what the hell it's called, the State or something. And Giancarlo Esposito is in here. He's mostly in the mech suit type thing where there's little screens on the front of these suits and his face is on it, but you do see him every now and again physically. He's basically playing the character he always plays, which is starting to get a bit annoying, actually. The fact that it's like, you get this guy who's a great actor, but now you're starting to make him play the same character every time. And it's like, you really got to start casting this dude in something else. And what's his name? Oh, why am I forgetting his name? Something Alexander, the guy from Seinfeld. He's in there for, again, very briefly, as human. The company that Stanley Tucci's character runs is basically making everyone zombies because they're all living in those headset things where he's managed to make it where you can be in two places at once. You can, one side of your brain will be on holiday while the other is at work, and he basically has control everywhere and stuff like this. And robots are outlawed now, and there's meant to be a peace treaty signed between Clinton, Bill Clinton, Stanley Tucci's character, and Mr. Peanut. No, you heard that correctly, Mr. Peanut, the robot of Mr. Peanut, which is voiced by Woody Harrelson. And the robots kind of get put into this thing they call the X Zone, which is this gigantic area out in the desert somewhere, and they can live out there. The other voice for the robot that's with Chris Pratt, he has a little robot called Herm for the movie, and the voice of that is Anthony Mackie. So it's kind of like a who's who of Marvel almost at times with this. Brian Cox as well does a voice for one of the robots, a baseball robot. They're really kind of the main voices of our main actors whose voices are kind of in here. But it's just this weird, slow, poorly structured movie. The chemistry between Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt isn't great. There's moments where it works, but it's very kind of standoffish between her character and him. But she keeps having to need him and stuff. But it's just the way it's played. Whatever way it is played and stuff. Yeah, their chemistry, it's not particularly there, which doesn't quite work for a movie that you're watching these two having to be with each other for the majority of the movie. By the way, the movie is just over 2 hours long, so it's long and it feels long. That's another issue. The only real highlight for the movie, again, is the special effects. There are some humorous moments with the robots, more with Herm and Chris Pratt's character. And Chris Pratt, by the way, you introduced to him is he was a soldier who was fighting in the war against the machines, and now when we meet him again, then he's actually kind of a smuggler. It's almost like they're trying to make him a Han Solo almost, where he can basically get goods from within the X Zone and get them out, and he's kind of selling them on the black market. But yeah, it's just there's a story there that you could see it could have been great. And it's just the pacing, the structure, and everything else, the writing really lets it down. And that's the big issue. And this is for a movie that went directly to Netflix. It's a Netflix movie. Like, they didn't put it on the big screen. They weren't planning to put it on the big screen. It cost $320 million to make this thing. And I'm not exaggerating. $320 million. How did they ever expect to get that money back? It's insane, the money they spent. Now, when you see the level of special effects in it, especially at the end, you kind of go, okay, I can see why it was expensive. I still don't think it needed to be that expensive. Like, it looks impressive, but it doesn't need that type of budget. We've seen things with even better special effects than this movie for half the price. Like, that's insane. And I think they worked it out that the price tag for this movie, when you break it down, equals something like 25 or 26 Godzilla minus ones. That's how many Godzilla minus ones you could have made on its budget compared to the Electric State's budget, which is just crazy price. But yeah, the voice acting, it's strange. It really is strange. Woody Harrelson's fine. Brian Cox sounds very lively, actually, which is funny because the dude just seems to moan and bitch about everything lately. Giancarlo Esposito, because he's in this mech suit and you really only are looking at a screen monitor with his face, it very much plays that way, and that's not a good thing. You might think, well, that's how it should. No, because it's basically, he was sitting in a room on his own just reading the lines, and that's exactly how it comes across, is it's just a guy reading lines. I mean, you could essentially say he's phoning it in, because he really is just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm here to do this, and you just come out and blah blah, and you're like, wow, I've seen him put a lot more effort into these type of characters, and not in this one. He's literally just reading lines, and a few of them are like that. Even Stanley Tucci, he looks like he's just there for the paycheck. He looks like he couldn't have cared less about being in this movie. But overall, it's a boring movie. It's not like this absolutely horrendous, unwatchable thing. I have seen a lot of comments saying that it absolutely is. But again, I wouldn't particularly recommend it. You know, that's just my opinion. You could all watch it and think it was actually quite decent. Again, the special effects are good. Chris Pratt, for the most part, is decent. There's, as I said, those moments where he seems to be almost pretending to be Star-Lord. Like, it's like he's pretending to be someone else, pretending to be Star-Lord. That doesn't particularly work, but the stuff where he's interacting with Herm is good and stuff. Again, his kind of chemistry there with Millie Bobby Brown isn't all that there. There's a couple of moments where it is, but usually it really isn't. And Millie Bobby Brown is just a one tone in this. Like, she really is. She's out there trying to find someone, and it's like, as I said, she goes through all these emotions, but her facial expression never changes. But her voice, for the most part, doesn't particularly change either. So she's just like this one note throughout the whole thing. She's not absolutely terrible or anything in it, but she's not exactly winning you over in it either. And I think it's quite telling that the majority of the things she gets offered are Netflix projects, because it's like, yeah, they know she's not going to be carrying any movie or anything like that. Like, literally, I think the only thing I've ever seen her in outside of a Netflix property was Godzilla. And other than that, everything she does is on Netflix. That's quite telling. But overall, it's a long ass movie, and it feels long. Great special effects, but other than that, yeah, I really wouldn't recommend it. So with that, I shall leave it there for this one. Like, share, subscribe. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.